From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I am your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast is Andre Johnson
Jr.
Do not forget the JR on the end of that name. Before we get into today's topic, be sure to like, share, rate, and review. If you are watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. And today, it's Wednesday, hump day in the city of New Orleans. And first off, how you feeling?
Feeling good. I got the fresh haircut.
I was about to say, looks pretty lined up right now.
You know what comes with the haircut? It's the burger.
Yes,
the burger was real good today.
All right. He did his duty. He got lined up. I know Juan Kincaid was calling you out over the last couple of days. He said it was time for a haircut, so I'm glad you were able to get that done. Today we're going to talk about what the biggest topic in the Saints world right now, the most newsworthy and noteworthy topic, as the Saints are steadily into their off-season summer break. Of course, that is Alvin Kamara, a topic we have talked about before, but we're going to advance it a little bit today with some specifics.
Right. Really looking at the contracts of other running backs across the league, the question begs for Alvin Kamara, what is the fair value? What's a reasonable compromise that AK and the Saints can come to contractually that'll get him on the field and ready to play in training camp?
Yeah, and there's a lot of factors to play into it. Obviously, Alvin Kamara is a guy that's got a unique skill set, a unique talent. The Saints don't necessarily have anyone that can – they don't. It's not necessarily about They don't have anyone that can do what he can do, and they know that, and he knows that. That's sort of his leverage. The Saints – part of this is a running back that's had a few down years. He's going to be 29 years old, and there's legitimate risks and questions involved with how far you go with guaranteeing or giving new money out to running backs that hit that age. So with all that being said, we kind of we crunched the numbers, we looked at the market, we looked at where everyone stands and where Alvin kind of fits into the mold, both age, production, and money-wise, and we're going to do our best to iron out a few options for you guys here today. So, but first things first, let's go average per year. Running backs in the NFL. There was quite a bit of off-season running back contracts this off-season signed in the NFL. So average per year. Kind of list the who has paid the most, and I just kind of go from 1 through 7 or 8 when it comes to the market, the running back market.
Starting at the top, it starts with Christian McCaffrey making $19 million a year. Then you've got Alvin Kamara, actually number 2 right now, making $15 a year on his current deal that he signed in 2020. After him, Jonathan Taylor with the Colts making $14 million. Saquon Barkley now with the Eagles making $12.5 million. Josh Jacobs finding a new home in Green Bay, making $12 million. Another running back with a new home, Joe Mixon with the Texans, making $9.8 million a year. DeAndre Swift, now with the Chicago Bears, making $8 million a year. Derrick Henry with the Ravens, making $8 million a year. Tony Pollard, $7.25 million. And we'll close it out with Aaron Jones, somebody who was drafted in the same class as AK, making $7 million this year.
Okay, so you've listed some names, and you could make a case, and that's the hierarchy of running backs in the NFL. At least the guys that were up for contract. What stands out? A couple things. The $15 million that technically Alvin Kamara makes isn't really $15 million a year because it was a 5-year, $75 million contract that he signed. But if you look at the fine print, it was more like 4 years, $50 million. Hence why he's right here, right now, asking for an extension. The year 5 was never going to happen just in terms of that number. So $15 million is a little bit inflated. What's 4 by 50? What is that, like 12.5?
Yeah,
so he's probably more in the neighborhood of 12.5, which would put him at number tied for 3rd in the NFL right now with Saquon Barkley at $12.5 million per season. As we mentioned, Alvin Kamara is 29 years old. The only player on that list older than him is Derrick Henry at the age of 30. That matters because 30-year-old running backs, you just don't see a lot of franchises investing heavily in 30-year-old running backs for high amount of money and high guaranteed dollars. As you mentioned, Derrick Henry, look at the career he's had. Right. Look at the career he's had, coming off of, like 1,100, 1,200 yards. It wasn't a great year, but still cracked over 1,000.
Arguably a future Hall of Famer.
And he got 2 years, $16 million from Baltimore, something like 8.5 or $9 million guaranteed. So the question is, where do the Saints go from here? How do both sides play this, and what do they do? What ultimately you have to understand is this is all about 2025. This is not about 2024. 2024, Alvin Kamara is going to make like $10.2 million or something like that base salary. I think with the bonuses, it's probably going to be over $11 million. He's fine in 2024 in terms of the money he's actually going to make. And that doesn't include all the restructures that they did with that contract in previous years where base salaries were converted to signing bonuses. We know the drill. So right now, 2024, I think he's adequately compensated and probably happy or at least comfortable with where he currently stands. 2025 is what it's about, because you don't want to necessarily, if you're a running back, know you're going into the last year of your contract. There's a lot of risk. He's had a lot of wear and tear on his body. He's put a lot on the line for his team for the first 7 years of his career, and he wants to know he's going to be a part of the plans in 2025. That's totally fair, and this is the only time he's going to be able to do that. This is his leverage, and he is playing that leverage right now. But it does not come without risk, as we mentioned, because let's just say, for the sake of argument, nothing gets done, and he has to do whatever this year, and then next year he gets cut, becomes a free agent. What could you realistically command on the free agent market at 30 years old with Alvin Kamara? Even if he had a fantastic season, what would he ultimately command on the open market? Would it be a Derrick Henry contract?
Probably close to that.
Close to that, $8 or $9 million.
Of the guys that I read off after Jonathan Taylor at number 3, the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys are all starting on new teams this year.
So there's an approach you have to take. I know there's some talk about a 2-year extension. To me, if I'm the Saints, I am not guaranteeing or even considering guaranteeing anything past 2025 when he turns 30 years old, with the assumption that he's going to have a good year this year. We don't even know if that's going to happen, because a lot of things can happen in the NFL, especially at the running back position. So I'm not interested in guaranteeing anything past 2025. That needs to be articulated to Alvin Kamara. Alvin has to understand that. That's where, if he wants anything past that, all leverage is gone at that point, because frankly, you're just not going to win that battle both here and anywhere else. So what do you do if you're the Saints? Well, there's a couple of options. The easiest option, and I don't think Alvin will be down for this, but I was thinking about this today. If the Saints just went ahead and said, you know what, Alvin, I don't know about next year, but do you want to be like the highest paid running back this year, and just hand him a check? You know, just kind of give him a check, some kind of bonus, and just give him, frankly, a raise. They have the cap space to absorb it. And he's at $11 million or $10.2 million right now, and just give him that raise to $18, $19 million a season for 2024, where they can obviously absorb that hit. That would be great. He gets the raise. The Saints don't have to worry about 2024, worry about 2025 next year, where all the risk is obviously mitigated. I don't think Alvin's going to do that, because I don't think it's about the actual monetary value. I think it's about the guaranteed money in 2025. So that was one option. That's a far-fetched option, but it was one I had to throw out there, because, hey, you want to be the highest paid running back, I can do it for you this year, and we can absorb the cap hit. Option B is simple. Already on the books for that $22.4 million unguaranteed base salary in 2025. So how much of that 22.4 are you willing to guarantee for Alvin Kamara? If you're looking at the market and there's, let's just refresh it. You're not going to get McCaffrey money.
Yeah, he's getting 24 mil guaranteed.
At 25 years old, Jonathan Taylor, 14 mil a season, I don't think you're getting that.
Yeah.
Then we get to 27-year-old Barkley at 12.5.
I would say that's a bit too high. Where I would start is kind of in that Joe Mixon range. When you're looking at, he's making about $9.8 million a year. He's got 13 mil guaranteed. Now, his deal is a 3-year, $25 million deal. So about half of his contract's guaranteed. That's when I would really start looking for Alvin Kamara, because I think Alvin Kamara is better than Joe Mixon. I don't think there's any doubt that he's had a better career than Joe Mixon. I don't think he's going to get what Christian McCaffrey got. I don't think he's going to get what Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley got because they're both younger than him, especially Jonathan Taylor. But when you start looking at the Joe Mixons of the world and the Derrick Henrys of the world and the Aaron Joneses of the world, I think Alvin Kamara could kind of settle into that range, if not a little bit higher.
Okay, so I'm with you because I would be willing to give him more than Joe Mixon.
Yeah.
I would mildly consider Josh Jacobs at $12 million a season. So that's 9.8 Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs at 12. That's our parameters right there, 9.8 to 12. I wrote down of the $22.4 million base salary, my offer would be to him $11 million of that guaranteed. Now, what does that do? $11 million of that guaranteed, if you look at the numbers, it puts him at, again, we don't know how the running back market's going to look next year, but at this point, it would be what? The 5th highest paid running back in the NFL.
Right.
I think that's fair, given his age at 29 years old. And it would also, with the way the contract is currently structured in 2025, if you guaranteed $11 million, yes, it would bump up the dead money, but you could still get out of that with not the craziest financial hit if you had to, if you were the Saints. So Alvin gets a guaranteed $11 million. The Saints still have a little wiggle room, not as much as they once did, but they still have a little bit of wiggle room if they had to get out of that contract in 2025. To me, that's where you would have to settle in if you're the Saints, and that's where you would have to define the parameters of where he could potentially go and where he could potentially be. The guaranteed money in 2025, to me, should be around $11 million because, like I said, on the open market, let's just say, like we said, Alvin just plays it out. That's the other question. Like, if they just say, look, we can't reach a deal, what are you going to do? Is he going to play? Does he have to play? That's tricky, too, because I think he would to help his...
Yeah, if he doesn't play, then you're about to be going into next offseason. You're about to be a 30-year-old running back
that didn't play a season ago.
Didn't show us anything last year.
So does he have to play? I still think he has to play. I don't think he would hold out the whole season. But Alvin's his own guy. He can do what he wants. And, I think that would hurt, his situation. But let's just say they agree, okay, play this year out. We'll see what happens in 2025. We couldn't reach an agreement. And he has a decent year, one of his better years, better than the last 3. Comes on the market, going to be a 30-year-old running back. Is he going to get $11 million a season guaranteed at 30 years old, even after he's coming off of a decent season for the Saints in 2024?
I don't think so.
Me neither. I don't think so. And that's the risk Kamara's going to run here. It's not a total, well, if you don't like me, I'm just going to sit out and that's that. I do think there's a little bit more risk he has here. Although he's got a little more leverage, there is some risk as well. The Saints obviously has risk as well because I just don't – these two sides need each other in 2024, but in 2025, I think that's where Kamara loses a lot of his sort of earning power, loses his sort of leverage because at 30 years old, even if he has a great season, no one's going to be beating down his door to give him a record-breaking contract for a 30-year-old running back. Right,
and there's a reason why running backs often don't finish with the team that drafted them. If you look at the top 15 of, the highest paid average per year running backs, there's one guy on this list in the top 15 who is still with the team that drafted him, and that's Jonathan Taylor, and that's only because he just got drafted about 4 years ago.
Right.
Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara. Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones, James Conner, Miles Sanders, David Montgomery, Devin Singletary, Austin Eckler, Raheem Mostert, all guys who are no longer with the team that drafted them. And at that position, it's a reason that happens because when you get around this age and those teams really have to start making decisions, it's hard to justify paying a running back what they really want to make when they hit that 28, 29, 30 age range.
And I just don't see it. I mean, I just don't see him getting anything remotely close to that. Not remotely close, but close. He's not going to get $11 million a season. I don't think at 30 years old. I know he's a different style of running back, and you can minimize some of the things that you can do with him in terms of the wear and tear with him catching the ball and having less carries. But he's still going to be north of 30, and I just don't see the open market treating him well enough to offer him what he could potentially get right now from the Saints in 2025. If you're the Saints, you got to be able to understand where your risk is and how much you can please Alvin while also absorbing as much risk as possible without hamstringing yourself. That's why, to me, when I looked at that number, 11 million was as high as I was willing to go. And maybe that's even too high, but I think we're in agreement. Somewhere in the $10 to $12 million mark for Alvin in 2025, guaranteed. To me, that would be the way to go. If you do the 2-year extension thing where you basically just take 2025 out, I guess you almost kind of scratch it out and just 25 and 26, put them on the books so you can have a 2-year extension. To me, all the guarantees, all the risk, it's got to come in 2025. You can't have them on your books for a long period, for a high amount in 2026, because at that point he's going to be 31 years old, and who knows where he's going to be in his career at that point. So if it were me and I were handling this negotiation, or if I was the guy in the middle trying to navigate this situation, I would say 11 million guaranteed next year is where the sweet spot is between Kamara feeling respected and getting enough money next year to where he doesn't feel like he's going into the final year of his deal. The Saints showing respect to one of their guys, but also protecting their assets and protecting their organization. Oh, by the way, probably got to draft a running back high at some point as well, or hopefully Kendre Miller can develop into some, because that's got to happen. Life after Alvin, or life after Kamara, or life whatever or Jamal Williams. At some point, they got to get younger in that running back room.
That's exactly what I was thinking, because Alvin Kamara has been so consistent at that position. You really haven't had to think about life after Kamara for a long time, until probably last year when they drafted Kendre Miller to kind of start prepping for that eventual future. Now, because of this whole contract situation, maybe that future comes earlier than you expected. But yeah, especially in that Kyle Shanahan type offense that Clint Kubiak is bringing over, it all is based around the ability to run the ball effectively. So you're going to need a running back that you can trust. Hopefully, if you're the Saints, Kendre Miller can take that step up, and you're really going to have to start getting him touches to see if he is that guy this year. Because if for whatever reason you decide Kendre Miller isn't what you thought he was, you're going to have to start being in the market for a new running back to prepare for life after Alvin.
There's a couple of other things as well that are unknown, but factors to consider. It's simply this: how confident is Kubiak that he can run a successful offense without Kamara?
With the two running backs on this team, again, unless Kendre Miller's got something that we just haven't seen yet, that's a really tough ask.
That's one thing. And also this, if they can't reach an agreement, and we kind of touched on it earlier, does Kamara show up? I mean, is it in his best interest to show up? I think at this stage of his career it would be. He's not 26 or 27 right now. He's going to be 29. And then does that cause friction all season if he didn't get the deal that he wanted? There's a lot of factors that play into this. And I think, like I said before, both sides do have considerable leverage and considerable risk in this situation. But I could see a holdout. I really could, because if you're not going to reach an agreement, ain't no way Alvin's going to, go through all the practices that you go through in training camp in late July and August to if there's no, progress on a contract. I think a holdout could come. Now, I could see him showing back up for the regular season, maybe. But I think a holdout could come at some point. Also this, do you think a trade is possible?
I think it's possible, but I think you've got to be very realistic about what you're getting back as the New Orleans Saints, because, you really got to think about what is Alvin Kamara's trade value. 29 years old, whoever trades for him is going to have to inherit the same contract issue, and they're still going to have to negotiate with Alvin at one point, unless they just want a 1-year rental for this year because they think they're in a win-now type of situation. Would you get any more than a 5th or a 6th round for Alvin Kamara, considering his age and the situation that he is in monetarily?
Yeah, that wouldn't be worth it. There's no way that would be worth it. A 5th, no, that wouldn't be worth it. So let's put that on. We did that last time as well. Let's put that off to the side, because I don't see them going down that street right now. But if you're Kamara's camp, Would you accept $11 million in 2025 guaranteed?
I would. Yeah.
I think that's reasonable. I think if you're Kamara, I think that's reasonable. Somewhere between 11, like I said, between 20 and 12. I think that would be reasonable, and hopefully they're willing to accept those terms if that were to be the case. That's just us playing GM. That's just us playing, kind of looking at the market and realistically looking at all the factors that could come into play. I do think they want to get something done. I do think there's a belief that he has a lot left and can kind of thrive in this offense and perhaps even reinvigorate or revive his career, so to speak. It wasn't terribly down. But I also think there are financial implications that Mickey Loomis is not going to ignore when it comes to negotiating for Alvin Kamara. Over the next couple of weeks and months, I guess we'll figure out how it's going to be. But that's what we ultimately settled in on. 2025, $11 million of that, $22 million guaranteed. To me, that would be where I would try to go if I were the Saints and Alvin Kamara.
Right, and you definitely don't want to put yourself in a situation, if you're the Saints, that you've been in the last few years. Remember a few months ago when we were doing all those salary cap gymnastics because the Saints were $100 million over the cap, and we were talking about where they're going to have to restructure this person, let this person go to try to get under the cap before the free agency starts, and they're going to need the cap to sign their draft picks and all that. The Saints don't want to keep doing that every single year, and part of the reason they had to is the deals that they've made for older players in the past.
To create that space, you had the Bills hire later in their careers, which makes it harder for them to cut. They did a pretty good job of avoiding that this year. And then they did the Taysom Hill deal, which I was a little surprised about, but maybe this was part factored into the equation because they're at $12 million under the cap right now. Yeah. Maybe there's another extension coming. Maybe there's another trade or veteran they're keying on to bring in that could absorb that hit. We'll see. But the bottom line is this is going to be the biggest story for the Saints, really, until it gets resolved. And we'll just see how long it lingers and how far it goes into the offseason, the summer break, and into training camp. So I guess we'll see. Anything else for us today?
Nope, we're good.
All right, he's good. I'm good. We'll keep you posted on this Alvin Kamara stuff. But for now, we wait and see what ultimately happens. For Andre Johnson Jr., I am Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.